Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be discussing investing and retirement, why we're doing what we're doing, how to save, where to save, what point in investing that you may be in, and different paths to be able to get there. We are also going to be talking about a few other random things in there, Fed rates, things along those lines, just to be able to start giving people an idea of why we're doing and why we're approaching investing, savings, retirement the way that we normally do. With that being said, we're going to move right into it. And after you build a solid budget, in which case I'm going to have a Excel file pinned in the description of this video. And I also have two other videos. One's about average US budget, putting that all together so that way you guys can kind of see where you're at compared to what the averages actually are. And then a simplistic budget tutorial. Now that's just a going through the Excel spreadsheet, which I'm actually going to bring up at one point in this video, just to give a quick rundown on it because some things have actually changed since that video. So feel free to go back and watch those. And then we're going to move into where we should be at after we have that solid budget and we pin down everything that we need to be able to know exactly where we're at. So when your debt is paid down, and that's the idea of the budget, is to get yourself a basis and paying down debt, begin saving how much you can save without interfering with anything that you currently have ongoing. We want to build an emergency fund. That's going to actually be tied into the budget. A beginning emergency fund, in my opinion, should be about 1 to 3 months of living expenses. When you do the budget and you come up with, say you need $5,000 a month to live, that's $60,000 a year, then that tells you exactly what your beginning emergency fund should be. 1 to 3 months, so $5,000 to $15,000, right? Advance would be a little bit more, 5 to 6 months of living, with so I'd be, around $25,000 to $30,000 set aside just to be able to have a fully funded emergency fund. A lot of people actually like a lot more, so you're just going to have to figure out what your preference would be with that. If you would prefer to have $100,000 in there because that's going to be 20 months worth of living, whatever it may be, you want to have 2 years set aside. That's totally up to you. This is just kind of a quick overview of my opinion and what I do for myself. This emergency fund should be accessible, but not easily. And when I say that, I'm talking put it in a high yield savings account, something along those lines. Do not put it in your checkings account where you have a direct card to be able to just go spend that money. That's not what it's for. It's for emergency use primarily. If you have a card that you can just go out when you go out to eat, oh, I don't feel like using my credit card, use my debit card, and then you're just spending money, it's going to be very difficult to make sure that emergency fund stays topped off and stays in that range that you would like it. It is there in case you lose jobs, emergencies, medical, vehicle replacement, whatever that may be. Once you have your emergency fund up and running, talking about the beginning emergency fund, the easiest way for people to save money, and it has instant returns pretty much, depending on your employer and your own 401k. With that being said, I'm talking about if you invest 6%, they invest 4%. The company match, right? The employer match. The reason why I say it's instant returns is they're going to be putting that money in when you put in your money, right? So I always like to have my 401k set minimum to get the full employer match. That's super important because, like I said, instant returns, but you're talking about growing that money immediately, right? So you put in 100%, they put in $40. Cool, you got $140 now. When it only costs you 100. It's instant returns. That's great. There is a cap on how much you can put in on a 401k every single year. They just raised it to, I believe, 26,500, something along those lines. It was in a previous video that I did. That's off of my memory, so if I'm incorrect, I apologize. I do know they moved the Roth IRA up to 7,500 yearly cap. That's going to be pre-tax money. So before your federal, your health insurance, FICA, Social Security, before all that comes out, that's where the money's coming. So you actually have a larger pool of money that you're actually putting into 401k. So it is a direct reflection of how much you are making pre-tax for your savings rates. So most people say that you should be saving about 10 to 20% minimum. You go on Fidelity, you go on to any of these websites and accounts, they all have their own rate that they suggest that you be saving. I'm in the mode of 20 to 25%. So if you're putting in 10% into your 401k, that's 10% right off the top. That's going in there. The employer match, say it's 4%, so now you're actually at 14% of your actual income is just going to savings, because that actually does matter when it comes to percentages, the employer match. So make sure you're getting the employer match. There's no reason to miss out on it. There's a couple of caveats with it, the how much actually is vested to you, how long it may take for that, but every plan is going to be different. It's going to be too much to cover in this video. So just take a look at your own plan and figure it out on your own. That's going to be the easiest way I can recommend it to you. Then we're going to move into what I feel should be the next step for people. I'm not a financial advisor. However, defensive investing. So when I say defensive investing, I'm talking ETFs, mutual funds, index funds. It's passive. You just let it go on its own. It grows on its own. You are the one who gets the benefit from it. It is not high risk. Sadly, that also means more times than not, it's not going to be a high reward, but a small reward over a long period of time actually is going to be more than you could ever think it could be. With that being said, I recommend the Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is going to be great because it grows tax-free, you pull out tax-free, it has those kind of incentives behind it. It does have a cap that is achievable for most people. $7,500 a year, which equals about $144.23 per week. If you have an extra $150 a week laying around, the Roth IRA is going to be the way to go. You may not actually need it now, but the sooner you put that money in there and you get it working for you and growing for you, the better off you're going to be later on. After your defensive investing is true, if you don't think $7,500 a year is enough for your defense, then increase that. You can have a after-tax account, or you can contribute more to your 401k. I consider that defensive investing as well, because it's kind of automated. It makes it nice for you, easy. You have access to funds, not individual stocks. If you don't feel it's enough between those two, by all means, you can have an after-tax account that's a dividend account, ETFs, mutual funds, index funds. You can have a DCA in. It doesn't have to be, it can be still passive, and that's what's important, is so that way you never actually have control of the money or access to it. It moves in, it stays there, it grows over time. You don't have to do anything. Now we get into what I call my fun money. A lot of people also call it FU money. I actually like that terminology, because once you start having this kind of money, that means all your debts are paid, pretty much. You may have a low interest rate mortgage or no APY auto loan, something along those lines that actually allows you to move into the fun money quicker, but you want to make sure that you have a solid foundation before you start the fun money. When I'm talking fun money, it's an after-tax investment account. It's what I use for my direct stock picks, my options trading, things along those lines. I have a couple of videos of top stocks to watch for 2026, January, all that good stuff. I've been kind of following them and updating the videos as we go. That's where this applies. I don't recommend you doing it in your defensive investing, your foundation. This is strictly for extra money. So you already hit your 20% goal of savings for the future for retirement, and you decide you got extra money laying around on top of that. That's where your money goes, and you get to have some fun with it while still investing. So I'm going to do videos later on about options trading. That's going to be a whole nother level of investing for most people. Very easy to do, very simple to do, very easy to lose a lot of money. That's why I'm not going to go through it on this one. And please make sure you do your own research before you invest into anything. That's super important that you know what you're investing in and you're comfortable with it, let alone your risk tolerance for that. So, the reason why we are doing all of this is for financial freedom. That's ideally what it is. I believe in financial freedom over retirement. The reason being is when you think retirement, you think you are not going to be doing anything at all. You can do only your hobbies, everything's paid off, and you're going to grow old, right? I believe in financial freedom. That means you just have the financial freedom to do whatever it is you want. If you want to keep working, you want to get a part-time job because you don't want to lose out on the social norms that you've come to grow and love, then awesome. I don't necessarily consider that retirement though, because if you're still working. So that's why I like it. It's a little more broad. It gives us a little more room to play in what exactly it is that we are looking for and what we want. So, financial freedom to me, that means you have enough money to cover all your expenses, generating from your already invested money, any kind of source of passive esque income. When people say passive income, that's actually a very scary term to me. And that's because when you do research into it, they say, oh, just go buy 5 properties and rent them out, you got passive income. It's not passive. The reason why I say that is okay, you can make it mostly passive. You can go get a management company, you can go get advertisers, you can go get accountant, and you can do everything that you need to do to make it as passive as possible. But guess what? The dryer and washer goes out and it's not in the terms of your agreement with your management company as to who pays what, who does what, then all of a sudden they're calling you. And guess what? That's not passive. You still got to put in the work, you still got to put in effort. It may be minimal, but it's not truly passive. My opinion, the only passive method is you set it up and you forget it, is that defensive investing. You have it automatically come out of your paycheck or out of your checkings account. It goes straight into whatever app you're using for your Roth. So we're just going to use Fidelity. It's my preferred platform for my own investing. That money goes right out. It DCAs in. It automatically gets set to buy an ETF for you. And that ETF kind of grows on its own. Your money's growing on its own. That to me is truly passive. Anything outside of that means you may not need to 100% be there all the time, but eventually you may need to be there, right? If you are getting a payout from a company that you used to own or something like that, to where you actually set it up as passive, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. I'm glad you were able to do it and find a way around what I'm saying, and that's fantastic. I'm good for you, right? So we have these accounts, the retirement accounts. They originally were designed to fill the gap between when you are retiring and Social Security. That is a great ideology and a great idea out there. It's not always plausible and it's not always feasible. The reason why I say that is because if you only use the retirement accounts that are readily available for you and you don't expand on it, you may not be able to bridge that gap. So, we're going to get into Social Security, inflation, all that kind of stuff, but we're going to finish up this one slide first. The idea behind financial freedom, and you can look into it, it's the FIRE FINE movement. You got a bunch of different movements. They're great, they have great ideas, they don't work for everybody. So you need to figure out what works for you. And it doesn't matter what Johnny down the road did or Billy that you knew from high school, what he's got going on. You need to figure out what works for you, your own income, your own budget, your own family, what it is you need to do to make yourself happy if you're striving for financial freedom. The best idea for true retirement and true financial freedom is that you can live off of 3% and invest the rest. That allows your investments to grow and not actually reduce in value statistically. It can still happen, so I'm not trying to say that it's impossible for it to fail, because it can fail depending on what happens with the market. It may be bad timing, but on average, it should succeed more times than not. Should, not guaranteed. Well, figuring out how much it costs for you to live and how much you need going in and all that kind of stuff, you need to calculate your expenses now and what your bare minimum is. That's going to help you know exactly how much you need to live off of in retirement or when you are going to give up your 9 to 5 job. That's where it comes down to that budget. You need to hit that budget hard. You need to figure out a way to make it work for you. Then you got ways to lower your cost of living and increase your savings. So lower your cost of living, pay off your debts. That allows you to increase your savings, right? It's the whole idea of the budget. It's a great platform moving forward. I got a couple of videos out there about budgeting and paying off debt and stuff like that. Feel free to go back and watch them. They're gonna give you some ideas and path forward. That's the idea behind it. Leave room for error and emergencies. So, this financial freedom does not mean you drain your retirement account, put it in there so you can get a return on your investment, so that way you can try to retire even earlier. This means you need to keep re upping your emergency fund and your cash on hand. That is super important. A lot of people might misconstrue those too, that, oh, my after tax platform, it's growing at 10%. If I move my emergency fund, it's 30 grand. That means I'm going to get 3 grand back a year. I don't have any emergencies coming up. They're emergencies for a reason. Accidents happen, right? And you cannot forget about inflation. That's the part of you earn 10%, you only live off of 3%. It grows at 7%. That combats inflation, and it also allows your money to keep growing. So that way, when inflation rises, your actual cost of living goes up. You are able to maintain 3%. It continues growing. You're still pulling 3%, but that's actually more in your pocket every single year. We're going to get into a couple of these that I have pulled up. And the first one is going to be rate cuts. So there was a bunch of news with Jerome Powell. They came out and they left it stagnant, right? Which is absolutely fine. That means the market is heading in the direction they want it to go into, the Fed wants it to go into. They're not ramping it up, causing it to happen quicker, but a lot of people might not understand exactly what a rate cut does. So that's the whole idea of the screen right here. It directly affects your home loans, your saving yield, CDs, high yield savings accounts, anything that is going to be based off of them making money off the US government, right? Or the US Fed rate. So if the banks can make 5%, and they're going to give you an option of a CD at 3% because they use your money to make money, and it's a giant circle, right? Short-term lending, interest from banks, that's going to be your car loans. Any kind of loan you can go get from the bank is going to be directed or directly correlated to the Fed rate. So everybody was all happy about 3, 4, 5% home loans during the COVID era, and we're trying to get back there and stuff. The Fed rate needs to get lowered in order for us to be able to see that percentage loan again. That's effectively what it is. It makes borrowing money cheaper. When you can borrow cheaper money, that means you can get a return on your investment. So that sparks good sentiment and good value in the market, and that causes the financial market to normally boom. That's also important because when everything's booming and we're borrowing money, that means we're also printing money, and that causes inflation to go up. Right? So everybody's doing better, everybody feels like they're doing better, but inflation starts to rise. When they increase rates, that kind of tries to make everything a little more expensive, but it tries to combat inflation. So they want inflation to be around 2-ish%. 1 to 2% would be around right. Upwards of 3% is fine. And you can see in this page in 2022 we were at 7 to 9%. That was just crazy times. Everybody was scared of it. We want to keep it down to that 2%. You do need inflation because it's growth and everything, and it kind of causes us to keep moving forward and we don't get stagnant. If you have negative inflation, that's not bad as long as it's short periods of time. We actually would like it to be around that 2%, and that would be like perfect world scenario, right? In the last 30 years, it's hovered around 2.5 to 3.5%. Once again, if you're taking out 3% or more than 3%, so if you're making 10% and inflation 7% and you're taking out 3%, your investments are not going to grow. They're going to stay equal in value to what they are. The number may go up, but the buying power is reduced. That's the idea behind it. So you want to take 3% of your 10% with inflation at 2%, so your money's actually increasing at about 5%, right? That would be perfect world scenario every single time. There would be great success with that. But inflation fluctuates. The market fluctuates. It's not always going to be 10%. It could be 8% one year. It could be negative one year. You need to watch out for that kind of stuff. And that's why we have other ways of investing and cash flow that can counteract some of that, which gets us into the average market returns. So the S&P 500, including dividends, spent 10 to 10.5%. They vary because if you adjust for inflation, it's 7 to 8%. So if you want to take it out of there, inflation out of there completely, use 7%. You're taking out 3%, so you have 4% growth, and everybody's happy, right? Now, real inflation adjusted 7.5 to 8%. So when you hear people talking about, well, the funds I use are going to give 14% on average, that may be the case for a certain set of years, but it's not good to base it off of that for the long run. We want to make sure we're using a time period large enough that it guarantees success, or it tries to guarantee success at the best rate possible. If you want to try saying, I'm going to guarantee 12%, that's not realistic. You can't guarantee that. It's a hope, it's a want, you just can't guarantee it. Average cost of living. I know I said 5% earlier. In the US is actually $6,000 to $6,500 a month. And that brings us into this average Social Security at 62, $1,300 to $1,400. Not enough to cover that average cost of living. You need to get that average cost of living down. You pay down your house. Well, you go from 6,500 minus 2,200. Transportation, you don't need the car payments. You pay off those cars, then that's going to drop significantly. Food, oh my god, $1,400 a month. That's just crazy. If you can figure out a way to, maybe you have a vegetable garden, you grow your own tomatoes. You don't have to buy tomatoes no more. Cool. Any way you can figure out how to lower your expenses and make this work, which is why I also said earlier in the video, I no longer believe that the retirement accounts are just to bridge the gap to Social Security because, as you can see via these 2 pages, Social Security is not actually going to be enough to live off of unless you have everything paid for and you don't want to do anything fun. If you want to keep having fun in your older age when you no longer have to work, then you're going to want another source of income. That's going to be your 401k, your defensive investing, and hopefully, if you ever got to that stage, your offensive investing, hopefully that actually paid off. It's a little higher risk, but in reality, it can make a world of difference. So now the average age of retirement is cited between 61 and 64. Average age is 62 to 63. Now, at that point, you're 62, you're getting about $1,300 on the lower end of expenses. Hopefully, you paid off your housing and you're down to $4,000, where you only got to make up that, 2 to 3 grand at most. That would be doable with the defensive and the investing, but you gotta have that money going into those in order to be able to make it. Hopefully this video kind of gives some people an idea of what's kind of actually going on, where their money should be going, and why we put it there. There's going to be a million different videos out there, a million different solutions to this problem. You got to work out what your own is. Being honest with yourself is going to be a huge help. Put that money into savings. Figure out how to DCA in. Figure out how to passively invest it in an ETF that grows at that 10%. Compounding interest is going to be your best friend. Compounding debt is going to be your worst enemy. There's a huge difference in between those two, and you want compounding interest and time on your side. So the earlier you get to be doing this, the better off you're going to be. If you get to a point where you want to take a look and see what kind of ETFs to invest into, what kind of stocks to invest into, I have some other videos. I'll link them at the end here. If you got any kind of useful information from this video, please press the like button, subscribe for future videos, take a look at others, share with friends, and I will see you on the next one.